Hello, my name is Thane and I like to experiment with all kinds of AI technologies. But most of all, I like to test out all kinds of things with Midjourney. And I usually stick to the newest models. This time I bring you the concept of things that are made of unusual materials. This is going to be a series of multiple videos, with this being part 1 of the series. I tested out a bunch of things with Midjourney's latest version and selected nature-themed materials for this particular video. The concept is actually really simple. I took 4 different words: book, forest, man and skyscraper. I used these as the constant for each of the prompts, and they represent an object, an environment, a person and a building which all behave differently. And the interesting, at least to me, comes from combining these base words with materials that these things are usually not made of. So the prompt structure becomes word made of material, followed by all of the usual parameters I use for Midjourney. --seed for specifying the seed number. --r for setting the aspect ratio. --v for the version, which is 6.0 in this video. And lastly, I have prompted both default style and raw style, so I have set -style raw for half of the images. You can see the prompt for each of the images above each image grid in the comparisons. And there is also a link in the description below where I have added all of the images alongside their prompts on a web page in case you need to copy and paste them. And here are the images. Autumn leaves. Some of these concepts could possibly be the right environments for these. For example, the forest, but in this case the forest is actually made of colorful autumn leaves, like a collage. Some of the subjects are simply just covered by the leaves, but I think there are some interesting variations here. In V6 the default style and the raw style are sometimes quite similar, as the default style seems to also prefer photorealism. But sometimes the raw style is more literal. This has happened here as well with the man prompt, where we can actually see men made of autumn leaves instead of men covered by autumn leaves. Bamboo. This one has some mixed results. I am not that impressed by the books. The forest is not really unusual in this context, as there are actually bamboo forests out there. The man is somewhat unusual, but I have a feeling that there could be some man-shaped statues out there that have been made out of bamboo. But I really like the skyscrapers. They have really awesome designs in my opinion. Raw style is again pretty similar, but for some strange reason we seem to get some different viewing angles. I again like the skyscrapers the most out of these things that have been made of bamboo. Bioluminescent algae. Now, this is one material that is very unusual and in my opinion very pretty when applied to all of the subjects that I tried out. I really like the green or blue glow that this brings. The books seem to be just covered by bioluminescent algae, but they look so pretty. Raw style is again similar, but it is ever so lightly different. This time around we seem to have the more traditional viewing angles for the raw style, and slightly different angles for the default style. Cherry blossoms. Now an explosion of pinkness. It seems to be difficult for Midjourney to grasp how to make these subjects be made of cherry blossoms. It could be just this seed, but mostly we just see things covered with cherry blossoms and actually not made of them. Raw style seems to be better at this again, but most of the images have still turned out as things covered with cherry blossoms. But some of the images are really pretty regardless of this. Coconut shells. This is really whimsical and works really well as an unusual material. Some images have resulted in dioramas, sculptures or installations. And I have noticed that the top right image, or second image, of the forest seems to be sometimes doing this kind of arched look, as you can also see with this combination. Especially with all the nature themes, so you will see this pattern repeat here, because I have used the exact same seed for all of these reference images. But keep in mind that this is only one of over 4 billion possible seeds. Raw style does those arches too sometimes, and also brings them into the forest's lower left or third image. Although this is a really unusual material for things to be made of, this is doing it really well. But it may be that I just have not visited enough places that have an excess of coconut shells to make things out of. The skyscrapers look lovely to me as well. Colorful leaves. Similar to autumn leaves, but we instead have more variety in the colors instead of just the yellows, browns, reds and greens of autumn. We actually seem to have a couple of books where the pages are leaves. And a man in the top right or second image of the man grid is made of leaves there too. Really subtle though. It is strange, but this time I feel like the raw style is not an improvement. We see less books with leaves as pages. All the men are just covered with leaves. And we lost the forests entirely and got a pile of leaves instead. But I still like the colors. Dandelion fluff. This one is definitely a really unusual concept. There seem to be some struggles here. Not all things here are actually made of dandelion fluff. The lighting in V6 is really impressive though, and it makes some of the images much better now. Raw style has some interesting turnouts here, but I think I liked the default style a little bit more. The forests here look pretty much ordinary. And some of the skyscrapers have the addition of an enormous dandelion, or just a clever trick with the angles. Driftwood. This has some really interesting shapes. Most images look like some kind of sculptures or installations. But this could be a material that people have made similar things in reality. The forests are funnily just a bunch of sticks, and raw style is again really similar. But you can say that in these images, all of these subjects are indeed looking like they were made from driftwood. Flower petals. Flowers seem to have a recurring theme of extreme pinkness and just things being covered with them. At least, that is the case with the default style here. Raw style seems extremely similar this time, with things just covered with flower petals. Most of them are rose petals that are coming later on in this video also. So let's then see how they compare to each other. Flowers. This seems to work better for some of the subjects. And we have really colorful flowers appearing too. Also different looking flowers. I like the lower left or third forest image a lot. The rest are quite chaotic. I keep repeating myself, but raw style is similar again. And yet again we see things covered with flowers. Skyscrapers look interesting this time around. They look like they could actually be made of flowers. Grass. The men in these images really have hair made of grass and beards. I also like the rolling landscapes that this brings to the forest images. Skyscrapers are interesting too. Raw style brings some improvement to some of the images, but worsens the look of others in my opinion. I like the top left or first image in the man grid. That faceless grass man is creepy but fascinating at the same time. Lavender. This brings the color and the flower. And it makes some of the forest images really pretty. There are some really interesting looking skyscraper images as well, although they seem to just be getting the color and not the actual lavender flowers. The raw style images are good, but I liked the default style images more for this one. I guess this material is not really a material, and it's even difficult for Midjourney to come up with viable options what something made of lavender would theoretically look like. Lotus leaves. Yet another plant-based material that is unusual for the subjects I have chosen. Although the men are not exactly made of lotus leaves, this combination does produce some really interesting looks. I also really like the lower left or third skyscraper image. Although the raw style for V6 definitely looks better than the raw style did, I still think I prefer the new default style over this, even though they both are really similar. There are exceptions, but not these combinations. Rose petals. Okay, now we finally got to the rose petals I promised earlier. And they do seem to be really similar to flower petals, Except these images have turned out predominantly pink or red, whereas flower petals had more variety in colors. But for this one, we see how my preferences really fluctuate. I really like the lower man images or third and fourth images. We see shapes of man made out of rose petals. Simple, but effective. Seaweed. And the final one for this video. In some places it looks similar to grass, but it has sometimes more wetness in the images. Especially evident in the images where the forest is underwater. You may have noticed that I really like looking for the small nuances. And the last time as well we see that raw style is really similar to default style, but with slightly worse lighting. So here were some of the things I tried out this time. I really like the concept of trying to combine things with materials they are not originally made of. It really produces some interesting looking images that you don't see every day, or hardly ever. I did see a lot of similarities in some of the similar looking materials. I left quite many of these out of this video also. But still, as I looked at them again when writing the script for this video, I observed even more similarities, because I grouped these together based on similar thematic of nature and flowers. I started with these, because they were actually the most boring looking to me out of the things I tried out, with the exception of a few things. Anyways, I really thank you for watching. Let me know in the comments below if these combinations were interesting to see for you as well, and if you got some new ideas what to go and test out yourself. If you haven't subscribed already and you end up liking what you see here, please consider subscribing to my channel. And let's just continue prompting.